My name is Isaac Stern. This story is about Jan Peerce, a great singer and a good friend. Proud, passionate, witty. Whether he was singing Rigoletto at the Metropolitan Opera House or recording his enormous hit, The Bluebird of Happiness, he always sang from the heart. One of the most popular entertainers of this century, Jan Peerce was loved throughout the world, but only after he paid his dues. With relatively no training and very few professional contacts, his career got off to a slow start. Many managers dismissed him because he did not fit the perceived mold of the romantic tenor. It was true, one could hardly call Jan Peerce tall, dark, and handsome. In 1971, he starred in the role of Tevye, the father figure in Sholem Aleichem's The Fiddler on the Roof. As many have said of Jan Peerce, in some ways, he was Tevye. Like Tevye, he was a simple family man. He was devoted to his wife, Alice, who was his representative and his constant and faithful companion for more than 50 years. They raised 3 children, Larry, Joy, and Susan. And like Tevye, Jan's roots were in the Russian village familiarly called the shtetl. And like Tevye, Jan spoke directly to God. In that way, he touched everyone, whether it was the man in the street or the connoisseur at the opera. Jan and I shared many beginnings as artists. We both started as violinists. We both had the same manager, the legendary Saul Hurok, a unique character who was very close to us personally. And we both shared a passion for Carnegie Hall. Jan brought his art to the stage of Carnegie many times. In what turned out to be his last appearance was January 21st, 1982. He turned once again to the character of Tevye.
And we were told when Jerome Robbins did the choreography and we came in, every Tevye had to pass muster with him. So the first thing he said, remember, if you got something to say to God, there he is in the second balcony. And he put a red light at the Broadway Theater. And we'd look up there and every time, yeah, there's God. And you know, in this case, he said, I'm not really complaining. After all, with your help, I'm starving to death. You made many poor people. I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor, but it's no great honor either. What would have been so terrible if I had a small fortune? If I were a rich man, all day long a hippity-bitty-bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a bitty-bitty rich, diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle man.
Jan Peerce's mother and father, Louis and Henya Perelmuth, met and married in the Russian village of Horodets. They had a daughter who died as a baby in an epidemic in Russia. In 1903, they came to America with their firstborn son, Motel, seeking a new life in a new land. A year later, their second son, Jacob Pincus, later to be known as Jan Peerce, was born on June 3rd, 1904, in the family's tiny walk-up flat on Orchard Street on New York's Lower East Side. He was nicknamed Pinky by his neighborhood friends. When Pinky was 3 and Motel was 6, Motel was killed on Madison Street, hitching a ride on an ice wagon. Motel's death left Pinky as the oldest son, the one who would have to fulfill his mother's dream to have a doctor in the family. Louis, his father, had trouble getting started like so many immigrants who came to America at the turn of the century. But he did find work in the sweatshops. Jan Peerce remembered his father telling him, "Back when I came to America, you could get a good meal in a restaurant on Essex Street for 6 cents. But the trick was, where did you get those 6 cents? Tenya, his mother, had always dreamed of playing the violin herself. In her little town of Horodec, music was a way of life. Her family was too poor, though, to afford lessons, even from a fiddler on the roof. In the new world, she expected something different from her child. She insisted that he grow up on speaking terms with a musical instrument.
In my case, and I say it with all humility, the violin had something to do with me. Mm-hmm. It gave me the love and the desire to produce tones and not just sound.
To spin out a line, then.
Exactly. The word legato has always played a great interest to this day. My right arm has always been working for me subconsciously. But for the violin, for some reason in my case, I've always wanted to sing and always wanted to produce something which I hoped was beautiful.
Il mio tesoro intanto, andate, andate a consolar, ed a Betilio e pianto, cercate di asciugar, cercate, cercate, cercate di asciugar, cercate di asciugar. Ditele che quei torti a vendicar io vado, a vendicar io vado, che sa di stragi e morti non giovanio tornar, non giovanio tornar, che so di stragi e morti non giovanio tornar, non giovanio tornar.
Jan Peerce had his first chance to sing in his father's synagogue on Henry Street, which was founded by the immigrants from Horodec. Cantorial music, whose roots lie in both Oriental chant and Western harmony, flowered in the synagogues of Eastern Europe. The cantorial traditions and the names of its singers spread far beyond the ghettos and the villages.
When you're speaking of singing, you're always speaking in terms of your singing as a concert artist, an opera and recital. You have not spoken of your wanting to be a singer as a cantor. How did you come to be a cantor? And what made you decide to be a cantor? And what was the crossing point from one to the other?
I didn't start as a cantor. I started as an altar boy, as a choir boy. In Hebrew you say a meshorer. And I sang with every great cantor who arrived in New York from the, let's say, from 1912, 1913 to this day. As a youngster, I'd come home after a service with one of the great cantors, and let's say in the Attorney Street Synagogue on the east side, or on Norfolk Street, I'd come home and stand in my dining room on Madison Street, in my little apartment there, and look in the mirror, which hung on the wall, and I would imitate the man I had just done a service with.
In 1913, for the Jewish New Year observance in the Henry Street Synagogue, the 9-year-old boy was assigned a small alto roll which says, "From the earth we came, and to the earth we return." When it was over, the elder of the synagogue, Reb Shepsel, broke tradition. He left his seat of honor by the eastern wall, came to the boy standing at the altar, and kissed him on both cheeks.
So no matter what I accomplished, no matter what I did, no matter what concert, what performance, my father, who was a very wise man, who wasn't a foolish man, but to him, he would always bring up, this is great, but I remember Reb Shepsel kissed you on both cheeks.